to speak on and give you in a devotion. And lo and behold, it changed all of a sudden. So bear with me, okay? The title for this is going to be My Grace is Sufficient. Um, there's times I catch myself thinking about things in my life that I struggle with. And I've heard many people talk about having issues, either struggling with certain sins or just life's hardships or even physical ailments. And I've heard many people question why God doesn't take that away from us. I'm a Christian. Why doesn't God just rid me of this? I believe in Him. I believe He can do it. Man, that's a great question, and a justifiable question at that. If God is all good and He is all powerful, why doesn't He take this problem away from me? I honestly can't give you an explanation for every case. I can't. But the Bible addresses this a little bit. In 2 Corinthians, Paul writes about this. We're going to be in 2 Corinthians 12, and I'm going to read right now verses 7 and 8 to you. Therefore, in order to keep me from being conceited, I was given a thorn in my flesh, a messenger of Satan, to torment me. 3 times I pleaded with the Lord to take it away from me. Wow, that sounds familiar, right? Um, Paul struggled with the same mindset that many of us struggle with. He wanted God to rid him of the things that were plaguing him, that were bothering him. Um, it's a rather large debate on exactly what was the thorn in Paul's side. Many say it was a physical ailment, Malta fever, or epilepsy, or problems with his eyes. There's all kinds of theories on what a physical ailment for Paul might have been. Others say it was more of a spiritual problem, and some people say it was the grudging up of his past sins, or maybe a temptation that he could not completely rid himself of, or even that his mental capabilities were being attacked. We don't have enough evidence to pinpoint exactly what that thorn in the flesh was, but we do know that whatever it was, Paul wanted to get rid of it. He wanted it out of his life. Therefore, we understand that whatever it may have been was a major problem to Paul and what Paul was trying to do for the Lord. Um, think about this. Paul has something that is bothering him. Paul, probably one of the most, arguably the most outstanding heroes of faith of all time, right? And here it is. I'm just DJ. I'm just a nobody. I still feel at times like I'm a baby Christian, it seems like. But Paul had something that he struggled with. We also see that this problem was used by the enemy, right? Because it's as if it was rooted in demonic power, because Paul says that it was tormenting him. So no doubt that it was not of God. It was not something that he wanted to use, that Paul wanted to use. Do any of you have something that's tormenting you? I have things in my life that seem to rear their head from time to time to try to torment me. I'd say surely most all of us do. I don't think anybody's exempt from this. And how we would love for God to take these problems away from us, right? We saw in the previous passage that Paul realized that this thorn served a purpose. It kept him humble, is what he said. It's hard to grasp. Many of us don't want to grasp this concept, the concept that God allows things into our lives that cause pain and affliction. Let's read on verse 9. But he said to me, my grace is sufficient for you, for my power is made perfect in weakness. Therefore, I will boast all the more gladly about my weakness, so that Christ's power may rest on me. Paul is talking about Jesus speaking to him. He realizes that even though these times are hard, even though he doesn't like or completely understand the circumstances he's in, even though he asked God 3 times, asked God over and over and over to take it away from him, and he didn't. Even though he has this thorn in his flesh, God's grace is still more than enough to see him through it. He realizes that the power of God is perfected in his weaknesses, right? We all have weaknesses. If you have something that is nagging you, that you can't get away from, something that you want God to take away, but it hasn't happened yet, know that God's grace is still sufficient for you. In our weakness, the power of God can do the greatest work. If we have problems, if we never had problems, many of us would never lean on God, right? We would never turn to God. So in your time of troubles, with the thorn in your flesh, learn to lean on God. Kind of like what the old song says, if I never had a problem, I wouldn't know that God could solve them. That's so true, and it goes right along with this. One last verse I want to read you before I leave. Going to go on down to verse 10, and it kind of sums everything up. Paul says, "This is why, for Christ's sake, I delight in my weakness, in insults, in hardships, in persecutions, in difficulties. For when I am weak, then I am strong." He gets it, that the power of God can do the greatest work in our weaknesses, right? So, along with that same verse right there, praise God through everything. In your times of trials, in your weaknesses, even though you have a thorn in your flesh, praise God, because he knows about that. He knows what's afflicting you, but he wants you to trust him, right? He wants you to let him make all things right, to trust in him and build your faith through these things. I don't know if that was for anybody in particular or just for me, because I know it's something that has been on me for a little bit. But remember, there are things in our lives that aren't necessarily of God, but he lets them come at us so we will turn to him and we will trust him. Always remember that, and always give praise to God for knowing that he is almighty and all powerful. And even though we don't understand his will and we don't understand his ways are perfect. He knows exactly what to do in our lives. I love you all. Hope to see you soon. Stay dry out there today. Have a good one.